If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the podcast. Chapter 1: The Foundation of the Myth, Birth of a Sacred Mountain. Part 1: Creation Myths and Ancient Origins. In the beginning, when the world was young and the gods walked among the clouds, there arose from the earth a mountain unlike any other. The ancient texts tell us that this mountain, which we call Kailash, came forth from the cosmic waters when the great god Brahma first began to create the world. The scriptures say that when Brahma opened his eyes and began his work of creation, he needed a place from which to rule over all the worlds. So he caused the earth to rise up in the shape of a great mountain, perfect in its form, white as the purest snow, shining like a crystal in the light of heaven. This mountain was not born like other mountains, through the slow movements of the earth or the fire of the underworld. No, Kailash rose up in a single moment, complete and perfect, as the will of the Creator made it so. It stood as the center of all creation, the point around which the entire universe would turn. The wise ones say that Kailash is the same as Mount Meru, the cosmic mountain that stands at the very heart of existence. Just as a wheel has a center around which all the spokes turn, so does all creation move around this sacred peak. The sun and moon circle around it, the stars dance in patterns above it, and all the worlds find their proper places in relation to its holy presence. From the four sides of this mountain, the great rivers of the world began to flow. These waters carried life to every corner of the earth, making it possible for all beings to live and grow. The mountain became like a great tree of life, with its roots deep in the earth and its peak touching the highest heavens. The ancient people knew that this was no ordinary mountain. They saw how it stood apart from all others, how its shape was so perfect that no human hand could have made it. They understood that the gods had chosen this place as their own, and so they began to worship it from far away, knowing that only the pure of heart should come near to such a holy place. As the ages passed, different peoples came to know of this mountain and its power. Each group added their own stories and beliefs, but all agreed on one thing: this mountain was sacred beyond all others, a place where heaven and earth met, where the divine powers dwelt in eternal peace. Thus was Kailash born, not from fire and stone alone, but from the very breath of creation itself. Part 2: Lord Shiva's Divine Abode. When the earth was young and the sacred mountain stood alone in its glory, the great Lord Shiva looked upon all creation and chose this highest peak as his dwelling place. Here, where the snow never melts and the winds carry prayers to heaven, the mighty god made his home with his beloved wife Parvati. The sacred texts tell us that Shiva sits in deep meditation on the summit of Kailash, his body covered in ash, his hair flowing like rivers down the mountainside. His third eye remains closed in peaceful thought, for when it opens, the power of his gaze can destroy and create worlds. Around his neck, the great serpent Vasuki coils like a sacred thread, while the crescent moon rests upon his forehead like a crown of silver light. It is here that Shiva performs his cosmic dance, the Tandava, which keeps the universe in motion. When he dances, the very mountain shakes with joy, and all the gods gather to watch this divine performance. His dance brings both destruction and rebirth, for nothing can be born anew until the old has passed away. The rhythm of his steps echoes through all creation, marking the endless cycle of time itself. Parvati, the Divine Mother, sits beside her Lord in perfect harmony. She is the gentle force that balances Shiva's fierce power, the earth to his sky, the calm to his storm. Together they watch over all living beings from their throne of ice and stone, blessing those who approach with pure hearts and honest devotion. The mountain itself became sacred because of their presence. Every rock, every glacier, every breath of wind carries their divine energy. The four faces of Kailash point to the four directions, showing that Shiva's power reaches everywhere, to every corner of creation. No earthly king or warrior can claim this mountain, for it belongs to the gods alone. Pilgrims who journey here do not come to conquer or climb, but to walk around the holy mountain in reverence. They believe that each step taken around Kailash erases the sins of many lifetimes and brings them closer to divine truth. The path is hard and the air is thin, but the faithful know that Shiva himself blesses their journey. From this sacred home, Shiva sends forth his grace to all who call upon him. He is the destroyer of ignorance and the giver of wisdom. He is the Lord of yoga and meditation, teaching souls how to find peace within themselves. His presence on Kailash makes the mountain not just a place of stone and ice, but a living temple where heaven touches earth, where mortals can glimpse the face of the divine. Part 3. Sacred Connections Across Faiths. Beyond the realm of Hindu devotion, Mount Kailash stands as a sacred beacon for many faiths. Each tradition has woven the mountain into its own spiritual fabric, creating a tapestry of shared reverence that spans across different beliefs and practices. In the Buddhist tradition, devotees recognize Kailash as Mount Meru, the center of all spiritual and physical worlds. They believe it to be the dwelling place of Demchok, also known as Chakra Samvara, a supreme tantric deity who represents the union of wisdom and compassion. Buddhist pilgrims journey to Kailash seeking blessings from this powerful deity, knowing that prayers offered at this sacred site carry special power. The mountain serves as a place where the earthly and divine realms meet, making it a perfect location for spiritual transformation and awakening. For followers of Jainism, Mount Kailash holds deep significance as the place where their first spiritual teacher, Rishabhanatha, achieved liberation. According to their sacred texts, this great soul reached the highest state of spiritual freedom on the slopes of Kailash, making the mountain a site of ultimate spiritual achievement. Jain pilgrims visit to honor this momentous event and to walk in the footsteps of their first guide toward enlightenment. The ancient Bon religion, which existed in Tibet long before Buddhism arrived, considers Kailash to be the soul of their faith. They call it Yungdrung Gutse, meaning the 9-story swastika mountain. For Bon followers, this peak represents the seat of all spiritual power, the place where their founder, Tonpa Shenrab, descended from heaven to bring wisdom to humanity. The mountain serves as their most holy site, where the forces of good triumph over evil. Each faith circles the mountain in ritual pilgrimage, though they walk in different directions according to their traditions. Hindus and Buddhists move clockwise around the sacred peak, while Bon believers walk counterclockwise, following their ancient customs. Despite these differences in practice, all traditions share a common understanding. Kailash is too sacred to climb, too holy to conquer. This shared reverence creates a unique spiritual harmony among different faiths. The mountain belongs to no single religion, but offers its blessings to all sincere seekers. It stands as proof that divine truth can be found in many forms, and that sacred places can unite rather than divide those who seek the divine. Part 4. Early pilgrimages and rituals. Long before modern roads and airways made distant places easier to reach, devoted souls began their sacred journeys to Mount Kailash on foot. These early pilgrims walked for months across harsh lands, carrying simple belongings and strong faith. They came from villages scattered across Tibet, India, Nepal, and other distant regions, all drawn by the same divine call. The practice of Parikrama, the sacred walk around Mount Kailash, began in these ancient times. Pilgrims believed that each step taken around the holy mountain would wash away their sins and bring them closer to divine grace. The complete journey around the mountain took several days, with pilgrims stopping at specific places to pray and offer their devotions. Ancient texts tell us that some pilgrims would prostrate themselves fully with each step, making their bodies touch the earth before moving forward. This form of worship could take weeks to complete, but the faithful believed such dedication would earn them greater spiritual rewards. They would rise before dawn, wrap themselves against the cold mountain air, and begin their slow, reverent progress around the sacred peak. Water from sacred lakes and streams along the path held special meaning for these early travelers. They would collect this blessed water in small vessels, believing it possessed healing powers. Some would carry this water back to their homes, sharing its divine properties with family members who could not make the journey themselves. The Pilgrims established rest places and simple shelters along the traditional route. These humble structures provided basic protection from weather and served as gathering points where travelers could share food and prayers. Local people, recognizing the sacred nature of these journeys, often provided assistance to pilgrims, offering food, guidance, and shelter. Seasonal patterns shaped these early pilgrimages. Most pilgrims timed their journeys to avoid the harshest winter months when snow made travel dangerous. Summer brought crowds of devoted travelers, creating temporary communities of faith along the mountain paths. These gatherings strengthened the shared belief that Kailash must remain untouched by human ambition. The rituals performed by these ancient pilgrims varied according to their religious traditions, but all shared common elements of respect and reverence. They would not point directly at the peak, would not collect rocks or plants from the mountain itself, and would always maintain humble attitudes in its presence. These practices, passed down through generations, created lasting customs that protected the mountain's sacred status. Through their devoted journeys and careful observance of spiritual protocols, these early pilgrims established the foundation for all future reverence toward Mount Kailash, ensuring that its divine nature would remain protected for countless generations to come. Part 5. Building the Taboos, Prohibition and Sacredness. The sacred nature of Mount Kailash demanded protection through ancient laws and spiritual rules. Local communities who lived near the mountain created the first restrictions many centuries ago. These people understood that certain places held divine power that must never be disturbed. The early rules were simple but absolute. No person could climb upon the sacred slopes. No one could take stones or plants from the mountain itself. Those who approached must do so with pure hearts and humble spirits. These laws came not from kings or rulers, but from deep spiritual wisdom passed between generations. Religious teachers from different faiths added their own sacred restrictions. Hindu priests declared that climbing Mount Kailash would anger Lord Shiva, who dwells there in eternal meditation. Buddhist monks taught that ascending the peak would disturb the cosmic balance maintained by divine beings. Jain masters spoke of the mountain as too pure for human feet to touch. As centuries passed, these spiritual laws became stronger. Local chiefs and tribal leaders made formal decrees that supported the religious restrictions. They appointed guardians to watch over the mountain paths and ensure no one attempted forbidden climbs. Those who broke these sacred laws faced punishment not just from human authorities, but from the gods themselves. The Tibetan people developed particularly strong traditions around these prohibitions. They created detailed rituals for approaching the mountain that emphasized respect and distance. Pilgrims learned specific prayers to recite, proper ways to walk near the sacred slopes, and exact methods for showing reverence without causing offense to the divine residents. Stories spread among the people about terrible consequences for those who ignored these taboos. Some tales told of climbers who became lost forever in sudden storms. Others described mysterious illnesses that struck those who touched the forbidden rocks. These stories served as powerful warnings that reinforced the sacred laws. Religious texts from various traditions began to record these prohibitions in written form. Sacred books stated clearly that Mount Kailash must remain untouched by human ambition. The mountain existed for worship and reverence, not for conquest or achievement. This divine purpose required absolute protection from any form of violation. royal courts in Tibet and nearby kingdoms eventually supported these religious restrictions with official laws. Kings declared Mount Kailash protected by royal decree, making any attempt to climb the peak an offense against both gods and earthly rulers. These combined spiritual and political forces created an unbreakable barrier around the sacred mountain. The taboos grew stronger with each generation. What began as local customs became universal laws recognized across different cultures and kingdoms. The mountain's status as forbidden territory was no longer questioned or challenged, but accepted as fundamental truth about the nature of sacred space. Chapter 2: Quest and Challenge: Encounters with the Unclimbable. Part 1: First Sightings and Western Explorers. The first Western eyes to witness Mount Kailash came through explorers who ventured into the remote regions of Tibet during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These men arrived seeking adventure and geographic knowledge, but what they found challenged their understanding of mountains and climbing. Hugh Rutledge, a British explorer and mountaineer, was among the first to document detailed observations of Mount Kailash in the early 1900s. His accounts described a peak unlike any he had encountered in his extensive climbing career. The mountain rose from the Tibetan plateau in perfect isolation, its four faces aligned precisely with the cardinal directions. Rutledge wrote of the mountain's extraordinary pyramid shape, noting how its steep walls seemed to defy conventional climbing techniques. The rock face appeared loose and unstable, covered with layers of ice that shifted without warning. He observed that traditional climbing routes simply did not exist on this peak. Herbert Tichy, the renowned Austrian explorer and photographer, arrived decades later with similar findings. His detailed surveys confirmed what Rutledge had noted. Mount Kailash presented physical challenges that exceeded normal mountaineering obstacles. Tichy documented the mountain's vertical ice walls and the complete absence of safe camping positions on its slopes. Both explorers recognized something profound about this peak. Beyond the technical climbing difficulties, they sensed the deep reverence local people held for the mountain. Tibetan guides refused to approach certain areas, explaining that the mountain was sacred and should remain untouched. Western climbing traditions emphasized conquest and achievement through reaching summits. Yet these experienced mountaineers found themselves questioning whether some peaks should remain unconquered. The local belief systems presented a different perspective on human relationship with mountains. Weather conditions around Mount Kailash proved equally formidable. Both Rutledge and Tichy reported sudden storms that appeared without warning, creating white-out conditions that made navigation impossible. The extreme altitude, combined with unpredictable weather patterns, created survival challenges that went beyond normal mountain climbing risks. These early Western accounts established Mount Kailash's reputation within the international climbing community. Word spread among mountaineers that this peak presented unique challenges that standard climbing techniques could not overcome. The mountain's physical structure, combined with its sacred status among local populations, created barriers that seemed insurmountable. The explorers returned to their home countries with photographs and detailed accounts that sparked curiosity among fellow adventurers. Yet their reports also carried warnings about attempting to climb this particular peak. They had encountered something that demanded respect rather than conquest. Their documentation marked the beginning of Western awareness of Mount Kailash as more than just another mountain to climb. It represented a different kind of challenge entirely. Part 2: The Geographic Barriers. The physical structure of Mount Kailash presents challenges that defy conventional mountaineering approaches. The mountain rises in a distinctive pyramid form with four faces that align precisely with the cardinal directions. Each face displays steep angles that create vertical walls of ice and rock. These surfaces offer no gentle slopes or gradual ascents that climbers typically use to gain elevation safely. The southern face stands as the most imposing barrier. Ice formations coat the rock throughout the year, creating a surface that shifts and changes with weather conditions. Climbers cannot establish reliable anchor points or secure routes when the terrain constantly transforms. The ice breaks away without warning, sending chunks weighing hundreds of pounds down the mountain face. Loose rock defines much of the mountain's composition. The rock layers separate easily under pressure or temperature changes. Traditional climbing equipment fails to hold secure positions in this unstable material. Pittons and anchors that work on solid granite become useless when the rock crumbles at contact. Each attempt to place protective gear results in more rock falling away. Weather patterns around Mount Kailash create additional barriers to any climbing attempt. Winds exceed hurricane force with little warning. Temperatures drop rapidly, even during favorable seasons. Snow and ice storms develop suddenly, trapping climbers without escape routes. The mountain sits at an elevation where weather systems collide and create unpredictable conditions. The lack of established routes compounds these physical challenges. No clear path exists to the summit that avoids the steepest sections. Every possible approach encounters vertical walls or unstable terrain. Climbers cannot identify safe camping spots or rest areas during an ascent. The mountain offers no reprieve from its demanding geography. Professional mountaineers who have studied Mount Kailash confirm these observations. The combination of loose rock, ice formations, extreme weather, and vertical terrain creates conditions that standard climbing techniques cannot overcome. Equipment designed for the world's tallest peaks proves inadequate for this particular mountain's challenges. The pyramid shape itself represents a unique obstacle. Most mountains offer ridges or faces with varying difficulty levels. Mount Kailash presents 4 equally challenging approaches, with no single route offering better conditions than the others. Each direction faces the same steep angles and unstable surfaces. These geographic barriers explain why no successful summit attempts exist in recorded history. The mountain's physical characteristics create natural defenses that have turned back every expedition. Technical climbing skills alone cannot overcome the fundamental structural challenges that Mount Kailash presents to anyone attempting to reach its peak. Part 3. Alpine Legends and Failed Ascents. Alpine Legends and Failed Ascents. Throughout mountaineering history, Mount Kailash has collected stories of defeat. Each failed attempt adds to the mountain's growing reputation as an impossible summit. These expeditions ended not just in failure, but in retreat filled with respect and sometimes fear. The most famous non-attempt belongs to Reinhold Messner, one of the world's greatest climbers. In 2001, the Chinese government offered him permission to climb Mount Kailash. Messner refused the opportunity. He stated that climbing the sacred mountain would be wrong. His decision surprised many in the climbing community, but it showed deep respect for local beliefs. Weather has defeated many expeditions before they could even begin serious climbing attempts. Teams arrive during what should be favorable seasons, only to face sudden storms that last for weeks. The mountain creates its own weather patterns that forecasters cannot predict accurately. These conditions force expeditions to abandon their plans within days of arrival. In 1926, Hugh Rutledge led one of the earliest serious attempts. His team studied the mountain for weeks before concluding that climbing it was impossible. They reported that the loose rock and steep ice made every route extremely dangerous. The expedition withdrew without attempting to go higher than base camp areas. Several Russian expeditions in the 1980s ended in accidents. One team lost members to avalanches on the lower slopes. Another group faced equipment failures caused by extreme cold that struck without warning. These incidents created lasting fear among climbing communities about the mountain's deadly nature. Modern expeditions continue to fail, despite better equipment and planning. In 2003, a well-funded international team spent 2 months studying possible routes. They used advanced weather monitoring and safety equipment. The expedition ended when team members began experiencing unexplained illnesses and equipment malfunctions. They retreated, reporting that the mountain seemed to actively resist their presence. Local guides refused to help climbing expeditions above certain altitudes. They explain that previous attempts have brought bad luck to their families and communities. This cultural resistance adds another barrier to climbing attempts. Teams find themselves without local support, making logistics nearly impossible. Each failed expedition strengthens local beliefs that spiritual forces protect the mountain. Climbers report strange experiences during their attempts. Equipment breaks in ways that should not happen. Weather changes instantly from clear to dangerous. Team members develop sudden fears about continuing upward. These accumulated failures have created a unique situation in mountaineering. No other unclimbed peak of similar height carries such a complete record of defeat. The mountain remains untouched, not just because of technical difficulties, but because it has broken the will of those who tried to conquer it. Part 4. The monk Milarepa and spiritual contest. Long before modern climbers attempted to scale Mount Kailash, ancient stories spoke of one man who reached its summit through spiritual power alone. The Tibetan monk Milarepa lived in the 11th century and devoted his life to meditation and prayer. His story with Mount Kailash has become part of the sacred history that surrounds this holy peak. The legend tells of a great contest between Milarepa and Naro Bonchung, a powerful master of the ancient Bon religion. Both claimed spiritual authority over Mount Kailash. They agreed to settle their dispute through a race to the summit. Whoever reached the top first would gain control of the sacred mountain and its spiritual power. Naro Bonchung began his ascent at dawn, using his magical abilities to fly through the air on his ritual drum. He moved swiftly up the mountain face, confident in his supernatural powers. The Bon master believed victory was certain as he soared above the steep slopes that had stopped all other attempts. Milarepa remained in meditation at the base of the mountain throughout the day. Followers watched with worry as their teacher sat motionless, while his opponent climbed higher. As the sun began to set, it seemed Naro Bonchung would win the contest. The Bon master was already near the summit. In the final moments before sunrise, Milarepa rose from his meditation. He spread his arms and flew straight up the mountain face, faster than lightning. He reached the peak just as the first rays of sun touched the summit. When Naro Bonchung arrived moments later, he found Milarepa already seated in meditation at the highest point. The defeated Bon master acknowledged Milarepa's greater spiritual power. He asked for one small favor as he prepared to leave Mount Kailash forever. Milarepa granted him permission to place his footprint on the southern face of the mountain. This mark can still be seen today, carved deep into the rock. This story has shaped how people view Mount Kailash for nearly 1,000 years. Local communities believe the mountain chose Milarepa because of his pure devotion. They say the peak itself helped lift him to the summit when it recognized his spiritual worthiness. Modern climbers who attempt Mount Kailash often hear this story from local guides. The tale reinforces beliefs that only those with divine blessing can reach the top. Physical strength and climbing skill mean nothing on this sacred peak. The mountain judges the hearts of those who approach it. These ancient stories blend with present-day climbing failures to create a powerful barrier around Mount Kailash. Each modern expedition that ends in defeat seems to confirm what the legends already taught. The mountain protects itself through forces beyond human understanding. Chapter 3. Faith, Ethics, and Authority. The Forbidden Mountain. Part 1. The Chinese Ban and Pilgrimage Laws. HTML. The Chinese government has placed strong laws around Mount Kailash since Tibet became part of China. These laws make it forbidden for anyone to climb the holy mountain. The government says this protects the religious beliefs of millions of people who see Kailash as sacred. Under Chinese law, Mount Kailash sits in a restricted area. No climbing permits can be given for this peak. The government has made clear rules that anyone who tries to climb faces arrest and heavy punishment. Border guards watch the mountain area closely. Local officials must report any climbing attempts right away. The permit system for visiting Mount Kailash is very strict. Visitors must get special papers from the Chinese government. They can only visit in groups with approved tour guides. Individual travel to the mountain is not allowed. The government controls how many people can visit each year. This keeps the numbers low and manageable. Chinese officials work with local Tibetan communities to enforce these rules. Many local people support the ban because they believe climbing would harm their sacred mountain. Village leaders help report anyone who might try to climb without permission. The laws also control where visitors can go around the mountain. There are marked paths for the holy walk called Kora or Parikrama. Visitors must stay on these approved routes. Going off the path toward climbing routes brings quick action from guards. For international visitors, the rules are even more strict. Foreign climbers who come to Tibet must sign papers promising not to attempt Kailash. Their passports and climbing history are checked carefully. Anyone with a record of trying to climb sacred mountains may be refused entry. The Chinese government says these laws protect both the mountain's religious value and its natural environment. Officials point out that allowing climbing would damage the ecosystem and upset religious communities across Asia. They argue that keeping Kailash unclimbed shows respect for different faiths. Local Tibetan communities generally support the government's position on this issue. They see the laws as protecting their most sacred site. Many Tibetans work as guides for the approved pilgrim routes. This gives them income while keeping their religious traditions safe. The enforcement has been very effective. No successful climb of Mount Kailash has been recorded since China took control of Tibet. The combination of strict laws, careful watching, and community support has kept the mountain protected. These policies have created a unique situation in mountain climbing. While climbers have reached the tops of all other major peaks, Kailash remains untouched. The Chinese government shows no signs of changing these laws. They continue to see protecting the mountain's sacred status as more important than allowing sporting achievements. Part 2. The ethics of climbing the divine. The debate about climbing Mount Kailash goes beyond simple rules and enters the realm of deep moral questions. This discussion involves people from many different backgrounds who must wrestle with competing values and beliefs. The climbing community itself remains deeply divided on this issue. Some mountaineers argue that every peak exists to be climbed. They believe that human achievement and exploration represent fundamental rights that should not be limited by religious beliefs. These climbers point out that mountains belong to all humanity, not just to those who worship them. Other climbers take a completely different position. They argue that respecting sacred sites shows greater strength than conquering them. These mountaineers believe that some places should remain beyond human reach out of respect for those who hold them holy. Reinhold Messner stands as perhaps the most famous example of this second group. Known as one of history's greatest mountaineers, Messner was offered the chance to climb Mount Kailash in the 1980s. The Chinese government approached him directly with this opportunity. Most climbers would have jumped at such a rare chance. Instead, Messner refused. He stated clearly that some mountains should never be climbed. He explained that Mount Kailash belongs to the faithful people who worship it. Taking away their sacred mountain would be wrong, he said. Messner's decision surprised many in the climbing world, but it earned him deep respect from religious communities. Religious leaders across different faiths have spoken strongly against any climbing attempts. Hindu priests explain that Mount Kailash serves as Lord Shiva's home. Climbing it would be like forcing entry into someone's house without permission. Buddhist teachers say the mountain represents spiritual purity that physical conquest would destroy. Even smaller religious groups in the region share these concerns. Local communities support the climbing ban completely. Tibetan people see the mountain as their spiritual protector. They believe that disturbing it would bring terrible consequences to their entire region. Many locals work as guides for pilgrims who walk around the mountain, but they refuse to help anyone trying to climb it. Some Western visitors struggle to understand these positions. They come from cultures that celebrate individual achievement and physical challenge. The idea that a mountain could be off-limits for spiritual reasons seems foreign to them. This creates tension between different worldviews about what mountains mean and how humans should relate to nature. The ethical debate also involves questions about cultural respect. Critics argue that dismissing local beliefs shows the same colonial attitudes that have harmed indigenous peoples throughout history. They say that respecting sacred sites demonstrates basic human decency and cultural sensitivity. This moral discussion continues to evolve as more people learn about Mount Kailash and its significance to millions of believers worldwide. Part 3. Pilgrims and Parikrama. The sacred mountain stands before countless souls who journey great distances to walk its holy path. For thousands of years, pilgrims have come not to climb, but to circle. They follow the ancient way called Parikrama, walking around the base of the mountain in prayer and devotion. The holy circle stretches 52 kilometers around the mountain's base. This path winds through valleys and over high passes, where the air grows thin and breathing becomes hard. Pilgrims walk this route to show respect and seek blessings from the divine presence that lives within the mountain. People from many faiths make this journey. Hindus believe Lord Shiva sits in deep meditation on the mountain's peak. Buddhists know it as the home of Buddha Demchok. Jains see it as the place where their first teacher reached perfect knowledge. Bon followers call it the soul of all spiritual power. Though their prayers differ, all walk the same sacred circle. The journey tests every pilgrim's body and spirit. Many start before dawn in the cold mountain air. Their feet carry them over rocky ground and through streams of ice-cold water. Some prostrate themselves fully on the ground with each step, making the circuit take weeks instead of days. Others walk steadily with prayer beads in their hands, chanting holy words. At 18,000 feet above sea level, many struggle to breathe. The thin air makes each step harder than the last. Some pilgrims grow sick from the height. Others suffer from cold that cuts through their clothes. Yet they continue walking because they believe each step brings them closer to the divine. Groups of pilgrims often travel together, sharing food and helping those who stumble. When someone falls behind, others wait. When the sick need rest, the group stops. This creates bonds between strangers who may never meet again after the journey ends. The Parikrama teaches that approach matters more than arrival. While some people in distant lands dream of standing on mountain peaks as trophies, these pilgrims find their victory in humble walking. They do not seek to conquer, but to surrender. They do not climb up, but circle around in respect. Each completed circle around the mountain is said to wash away the sins of one lifetime. Some dedicated pilgrims walk the path 108 times over many years. Others save money for decades just to make the journey once. The walking path itself becomes holy ground worn smooth by millions of faithful feet over centuries. Every stone along the way has been blessed by prayers. Every turn in the trail has witnessed tears of joy and pain. The mountain watches all who come, accepting their devotion while remaining forever untouched at its peak. Part 4. The Consequences of Transgression. The Consequences of Transgression. Those who have dared to break the sacred laws of Mount Kailash tell stories that chill the heart. Local guides speak in hushed voices about climbers who ignored warnings and paid terrible prices. These are not just old tales passed down through generations. They are records kept by villages and monasteries of what happens to those who show no respect. In the early days, when some foreigners first came to climb, several expeditions met with strange accidents. Climbers would become lost in sudden storms that appeared from nowhere. Others fell sick with mysterious illnesses that no medicine could cure. Some simply vanished, leaving behind only their equipment scattered on the lower slopes. Their bodies were never found, though search parties looked for days. The mountain guides remember each incident clearly. They tell of a group of climbers from the west who laughed at the warnings and started climbing at night to avoid being seen. By morning, 2 had died in their sleep from causes that doctors could not explain. The others abandoned their climb and left the region immediately, speaking to no one about what they had witnessed. Another account tells of climbers who made it partway up the sacred slopes before being turned back by visions that terrified them. They described seeing figures in robes who pointed them away from the summit. Some reported hearing voices warning them in languages they did not understand, but somehow knew the meaning of. These climbers returned to their base camps, pale and shaking, refusing to speak of what they had seen. The local people are not surprised by such stories. They know that Lord Shiva protects his home through forces that outsiders cannot comprehend. When someone tries to stand where only gods should stand, the mountain itself responds. Weather changes without warning. Safe paths become dangerous. Clear minds become confused and lost. Even today, when climbers approach with permits or plans to attempt the summit, accidents follow them. Equipment breaks in ways that should not be possible. Weather forecasts prove completely wrong. Team members suffer injuries that force expeditions to end before they truly begin. The monastery records list dozens of such incidents over the past century. Each story serves as a warning to others. The mountain does not need human protection because it can protect itself. Those who come with humble hearts and respect for the sacred laws find blessing and peace. Those who come with pride and the desire to conquer find only misfortune and failure. These consequences teach a simple truth. Some places in this world belong only to the divine. Mount Kailash stands as one of these eternal guardians, watching over those who approach with faith, while turning away those who would defile its sacred nature. Chapter 4: Mysteries, Science, and the Unknown. Part 1: Mystical Geometry and Natural Wonders. Mount Kailash stands as one of nature's most perfect forms. The mountain rises from the earth in a shape that seems too perfect to be natural. 4 faces point toward the 4 directions of the world with exact precision. Each side forms a triangle that meets at the top in perfect balance. Many who study this mountain speak of its pyramid shape. The sides rise at angles that match the great pyramids built by ancient people. Some say this cannot be chance. They believe hands shaped this mountain long ago, when beings possessed knowledge beyond what we know today. The mountain's geometry follows patterns found in sacred temples and holy buildings. The measurements between its peaks and valleys follow the same rules that wise people used to build places of worship. Each line and angle seems to serve a purpose beyond what the eye can see. Ancient texts speak of mountains built by divine architects. They describe peaks created not by Earth's movements alone, but by conscious design. Some believe Mount Kailash fits these descriptions perfectly. Its form suggests intelligence guiding its creation. The 4 rivers that flow from the mountain create another perfect pattern. They flow in 4 directions, like the spokes of a wheel, carrying water to vast lands below. This pattern appears in many sacred symbols across different cultures. The arrangement seems too orderly for natural chance. Those who measure the mountain find numbers that appear in holy texts and ancient calculations. The distances between its peaks match measurements used in building sacred structures. The height and width follow proportions that ancient builders considered divine. Energy flows through the mountain in ways that some say differ from other peaks. Pilgrims report feeling forces that pull them towards certain paths around the mountain. The walking route forms a perfect circle, as if planned by careful hands. The rock formations create shapes that look like symbols from various faiths. Natural lines in the stone resemble letters from sacred alphabets. Shadows fall in patterns that change with the seasons, creating images that believers recognize as holy signs. Scientists study how ice and wind could carve such perfect shapes. They look for natural processes that might explain the mountain's geometry. Yet many features remain difficult to explain through ordinary mountain formation. The mountain stands alone, separate from the ranges around it. This isolation adds to questions about its origin. Most peaks form in chains with their neighbors, but Mount Kailash rises by itself, as if placed deliberately in this spot. Whether shaped by nature's forces or guided by ancient wisdom, Mount Kailash displays geometry that continues to inspire wonder. Its perfect form challenges understanding while inviting deeper study of the forces that create such remarkable structures on Earth. Part 2. Scientific explanations for the unclimbed summit. The scientific community offers clear explanations for why Mount Kailash remains unconquered by climbers. These reasons stem from the mountain's extreme physical conditions and geological features, not mystical barriers. Weather patterns around Mount Kailash create nearly impossible climbing conditions. The region experiences sudden and violent storms that appear without warning. Temperatures drop far below freezing, even during warmer months. Winds reach speeds that can knock experienced climbers off their feet. These conditions change so quickly that planning safe ascent routes becomes extremely difficult. The geological structure of the mountain presents major hazards. The rock formations show signs of instability in many areas. Loose stones and crumbling sections make establishing secure anchor points dangerous. The steep faces contain layers of different rock types that weather at different rates. This creates unpredictable handholds and footholds that might give way under a climber's weight. At 22,028 feet above sea level, Mount Kailash sits in the extreme altitude zone, where human bodies struggle to function. The thin air contains very little oxygen. Even the most prepared climbers face severe altitude sickness at these heights. The reduced oxygen affects thinking and decision-making abilities when clear judgment matters most for survival. The mountain's isolated location adds to the challenges. It stands far from established climbing infrastructure and rescue services. Getting equipment and supplies to base camps requires long, difficult journeys across remote terrain. If emergencies arise, help remains days away under the best conditions. The terrain itself defies standard climbing techniques. The mountain's faces show almost vertical sections with few natural rest points. Traditional climbing routes depend on finding ledges and cracks that allow gradual progress upward. Mount Kailash offers fewer of these features than most successfully climbed peaks. Technical climbing equipment faces unusual stress in this environment. Metal gear becomes brittle in extreme cold. Ropes stiffen and lose flexibility. Electronic devices fail in the harsh conditions. These equipment failures create safety risks that experienced mountaineers know to avoid. The combination of all these factors creates a natural fortress that has kept climbers away. Each challenge alone might be manageable with proper preparation and equipment. Together, they form barriers that exceed the capabilities of current climbing technology and human endurance. Scientists studying the mountain note that these conditions exist on other unclimbed peaks around the world. The physical laws governing weather, geology, and human physiology apply equally to Mount Kailash. Its unclimbed status reflects natural forces rather than supernatural protection. These scientific explanations satisfy many researchers who study why certain mountains remain unconquered. The evidence points to measurable, observable conditions that create extreme danger for anyone attempting to reach the summit. Part 3. The Face of Shiva and Sacred Signs. Across the towering faces of Mount Kailash, believers see sacred forms that confirm their deepest faith. The mountain's natural rock formations create patterns that many interpret as divine faces and holy symbols carved by the hands of the gods themselves. The most revered site appears on the mountain's south face, where shadows and stone merge to form what devotees recognize as Lord Shiva's face. This formation becomes most visible during certain times of day when the sun casts shadows across the rocky surface. Pilgrims gather at specific viewing points, pointing upward with reverence as they identify the eyes, nose, and flowing hair of their beloved deity. The face appears differently throughout the day as light moves across the mountain. In early morning, the features seem gentle and meditative. By afternoon, the shadows deepen, creating a more powerful and commanding presence. Evening light softens the formation again, suggesting the peaceful aspect of Shiva in deep meditation. Beyond the primary face, believers identify numerous other sacred symbols scattered across the mountain's surface. Some see the outline of a trident, Shiva's divine weapon, etched into the rock formations. Others point to natural lines that resemble the sacred thread worn across the chest of Hindu deities. These patterns strengthen their conviction that Mount Kailash serves as Shiva's earthly throne. Tibetan Buddhists find their own sacred imagery in the mountain's features. They identify symbols representing the 8 auspicious signs of Buddhism, formed by natural rock patterns and snow formations. Prayer flags flutter in the wind as pilgrims offer their devotion to these divine manifestations. The interpretations vary among different groups of believers, yet all share the common understanding that these formations cannot be mere coincidence. They view each shadow, each rocky outcrop, and each natural line as proof of divine presence dwelling within the mountain itself. Pilgrims often spend hours studying these formations, finding new details with each viewing. Some claim the faces change expression depending on weather conditions or the observer's spiritual state. Others believe that only those with pure hearts can truly see the divine features clearly. These sacred signs serve as powerful confirmations of faith for those who journey to Mount Kailash. The physical manifestation of their beliefs in the mountain's very structure provides tangible connection to the divine realm. Each pilgrim returns home with stories of the holy faces they witnessed, passing down these sacred visions through generations of faithful devotees who continue to seek the divine presence embedded in this most holy mountain. Part 4. Unsolved Riddles and Modern Hypotheses. No climber has ever reached the top of Mount Kailash. This fact puzzles experts even today. Many mountains around the world have been climbed many times, but this sacred peak remains untouched by human feet. Several expeditions received permission to climb the mountain over the years. Each one turned back before reaching the summit. Some teams reported sudden weather changes that forced them to retreat. Others spoke of equipment failures that happened without clear reason. A few expedition leaders said their team members became sick or afraid as they climbed higher. The mountain has no established climbing routes. This is unusual for a peak that stands alone and can be seen clearly from all sides. Expert climbers have studied the mountain's faces through telescopes and cameras. They cannot find safe paths to the top. The rock faces appear to change angles suddenly. What looks like a possible route from far away becomes impossible when viewed up close. Pilgrims walking around the base report strange experiences. Some hear sounds like bells or chanting when no one else is near. Others see lights moving on the mountain slopes at night. These lights do not match any known natural phenomenon. Weather stations cannot explain the rapid changes in temperature and wind that happen around the peak. Scientific instruments brought near the mountain sometimes stop working properly. Compasses spin without direction. GPS devices give readings that do not match the known location. Radio equipment produces strange static or picks up sounds that cannot be identified. Research teams have measured unusual magnetic readings around Mount Kailash. The rock composition includes minerals that could create magnetic effects, but the patterns recorded do not match what scientists expect from natural magnetic fields. Some researchers believe there might be metal deposits deep inside the mountain that have not been discovered yet. Local people speak of time moving differently near the mountain. Visitors report that their watches run slow or fast without explanation. Some pilgrims say their hair and nails grow faster during their journey around the mountain. Medical experts cannot confirm or deny these claims. The perfectly symmetrical shape continues to puzzle geologists. Natural forces like wind and water should have worn away the sharp edges over millions of years. Instead, the mountain keeps its pyramid form. Some scientists suggest the rock is harder than normal. Others wonder if the shape reforms itself through unknown geological processes. Satellite images show features on the mountain that change between photographs taken months apart. These changes cannot be explained by normal erosion or landslides. The mountain seems to resist detailed mapping efforts. Each survey reveals new details that were not visible before. Part 5. Global Wonder and the Science-Religion Divide. Mount Kailash draws attention from people all over the world. Scientists, spiritual seekers, and curious travelers all want to understand this strange mountain. Television shows feature its mysteries. Books tell stories about its power. The internet fills with discussions about what makes this peak so different. Tourists come from many countries hoping to see the mountain that cannot be climbed. They travel thousands of miles to walk around its base. Photography expeditions try to capture its perfect shape. Most visitors leave with more questions than answers. The mountain affects people in ways they did not expect. Religious leaders speak of Mount Kailash as proof of divine power on Earth. They point to its perfect pyramid shape as something no natural force could create. Scientists disagree. They search for geological reasons to explain every strange feature. Both groups study the same mountain, but reach very different conclusions. Research teams use modern equipment to measure the mountain. Satellite images reveal new details about its structure. Ground-penetrating radar shows unusual formations beneath the surface. Yet each new discovery raises more questions. The data does not fit normal patterns found in other mountains. Academic conferences debate Mount Kailash regularly. Geologists present theories about its formation. Religious scholars discuss its spiritual importance. Archaeologists wonder about ancient connections to lost civilizations. These debates never reach clear conclusions. The mountain resists simple explanations. Media coverage grows each year. News reports feature expeditions that turn back without explanation. Documentary films try to solve the mountain's puzzles. Social media spreads stories of strange experiences near the peak. Public interest increases with each mysterious report. The divide between science and faith becomes clear at Mount Kailash. Scientists demand physical proof for every claim. Believers trust in experiences that cannot be measured. Neither side convinces the other. The mountain stands unchanged, while humans argue about its nature. Government officials limit access to protect both the mountain and visitors. Permits are difficult to obtain. Climbing remains forbidden by law. These restrictions add to the mountain's mystique. People want what they cannot have. Mount Kailash continues to challenge human understanding. It brings together different ways of seeing the world. Scientists use instruments to study its rocks and weather. Pilgrims use prayer and meditation to connect with its spirit. Both approaches reveal truth in their own way. The mountain serves as a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern knowledge. It shows that some mysteries persist despite technological advances. Mount Kailash remains untouched by human conquest. It keeps its secrets while the world watches and wonders. Chapter 5. Living Legend, Mount Kailash in the Modern World. Part 1. The Eternal Pull of Pilgrimage. Each year, countless souls make their way toward Mount Kailash, carrying hopes and prayers across vast distances. These pilgrims come from many lands and follow different paths of faith, yet they share one common purpose. They seek to complete the sacred walk around the holy mountain known as the Kora. The journey demands much from those who choose to undertake it. Pilgrims travel through harsh terrain where the air grows thin and cold winds test their resolve. Many save money for years to afford this trip. Some sell their belongings or borrow from family members. The physical hardship becomes part of their offering to the divine. Hindu devotees arrive believing they walk in the footsteps of Lord Shiva himself. They carry sacred water from the Ganges to pour upon the mountain slopes. Buddhist pilgrims spin prayer wheels as they walk, chanting mantras that their ancestors spoke centuries ago. Jain followers complete their circuit in reverent silence, honoring their tradition of non-violence even toward the stones beneath their feet. The pilgrimage season brings together people from villages and cities alike. Elderly men lean on walking sticks, determined to complete this final spiritual task. Young mothers carry small children on their backs. Monks in robes walk beside farmers in simple clothes. Rich and poor share the same rocky path around the sacred peak. Local Tibetan guides help many groups complete their journey safely. These guides know every stone and stream along the route. They have watched their fathers and grandfathers serve pilgrims before them. Through their work, they maintain their own connection to the holy mountain while helping others find theirs. The 3-day walk covers 52 kilometers of rough mountain terrain. Pilgrims sleep in basic shelters or tents, eating simple food and drinking tea to stay warm. Many fall sick from the altitude, yet few choose to turn back. They believe that completing this circle around Mount Kailash will wash away the sins of a lifetime. Some pilgrims perform the full-body prostration method, lying flat on the ground with each step forward. This makes their journey take weeks instead of days. Their devotion inspires others who witness such dedication. When pilgrims return to their homes, they carry stories of their sacred journey. These tales encourage others to make the same difficult trip. Grandparents tell children about the power they felt near the mountain. Parents begin saving money so their families might one day walk the holy path. This endless cycle of pilgrimage keeps Mount Kailash alive in human hearts. Each footstep on the ancient route strengthens the bond between believers and their sacred mountain. Modern transport may bring pilgrims faster to the base of Mount Kailash, but the walking must still be done by human feet, just as it has been for thousands of years. Part 2. Protecting the Sacred, Conservation and Policy. The sacred mountain faces new challenges in our modern world. Governments must now protect this holy place while allowing faithful believers to continue their ancient journeys. This balance proves difficult as more people each year wish to visit the mountain that has drawn souls for thousands of years. China controls the region where Mount Kailash stands. Their officials create rules about who can visit and when they can come. These rules try to protect the mountain's environment from damage while respecting the religious needs of millions of believers. The Chinese government limits the number of pilgrims who can enter each season. They check documents carefully and require special permits for the sacred journey. The land around Mount Kailash suffers from too many visitors walking the same paths. The soil wears thin under countless feet. Plants struggle to grow where pilgrims camp and rest. Wildlife moves away from areas where people gather. Rivers and lakes face pollution from human waste and offerings left by devoted travelers. These environmental problems worry scientists and religious leaders alike. Local communities depend on pilgrims for their income. Families provide food, shelter, and guides for the faithful who come to walk around the holy mountain. If visitor numbers drop too much, these mountain people lose their way of making money. But if too many come at once, the sacred mountain itself suffers harm. Conservation groups work with government officials to find solutions. They build better paths that cause less damage to the earth. They create waste management systems to keep the mountain clean. They teach visitors how to travel without harming the sacred landscape. Some areas now require pilgrims to carry out all their waste instead of leaving it behind. Religious leaders from different faiths meet with government officials to discuss protection policies. Hindu priests, Buddhist monks, Jain teachers, and Bon practitioners all want their followers to continue reaching this holy place. They help create guidelines that respect both the mountain's spiritual power and its natural beauty. Weather patterns around Mount Kailash change as the world's climate shifts. Glaciers melt faster than before. Rainfall patterns alter the landscape that pilgrims have known for generations. These changes force new thinking about how to protect the mountain for future believers. Modern technology helps monitor the mountain's health. Satellites watch for environmental changes. Computer systems track visitor numbers. Scientists study how human activity affects the sacred landscape. This information helps create better protection policies. The challenge remains clear. Mount Kailash must stay accessible to those who consider it their spiritual center. Yet it must also remain protected from the damage that loving devotion can sometimes cause. Finding this balance requires wisdom from both ancient traditions and modern knowledge. Part 3. The Interwoven Fates of Peoples and Faiths. Mount Kailash stands at the center where 4 nations meet. India, China, Tibet, and Nepal all hold this sacred mountain in their hearts. Each government must work with others to keep the mountain safe and accessible to believers. This creates a web of agreements that goes far beyond simple border control. The Chinese government controls the area around Mount Kailash. They must decide how many pilgrims can visit each year. Indian pilgrims need special permits to cross the border. The journey requires cooperation between both countries. When political tensions rise between India and China, pilgrimage routes sometimes close. This affects thousands of believers who plan their sacred journeys years in advance. Nepal provides another path to the mountain through its western borders. Tibetan communities spread across all these nations carry the oldest traditions about Mount Kailash. Their knowledge passes from one generation to the next, regardless of which country they call home. Political boundaries cannot divide their spiritual connection to the sacred peak. Different faiths meet at Mount Kailash in remarkable ways. Hindu pilgrims from India walk the same paths as Buddhist monks from Tibet. Jain believers and followers of the Bon tradition also make this journey. Each group brings its own prayers and customs, yet all show respect for others seeking the divine. Local communities depend on pilgrims for their income. They provide food, shelter, and guides for the sacred journey. When political problems reduce pilgrim numbers, these families suffer. Their livelihood connects directly to the mountain's spiritual importance. This economic reality influences how governments approach policies about Mount Kailash. Water from Mount Kailash flows into rivers that cross multiple borders. The Indus, Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Sutlej all begin near this sacred peak. Millions of people depend on these waters for drinking, farming, and religious ceremonies. Environmental changes at Mount Kailash affect communities hundreds of miles away in different countries. Cultural exchange happens naturally when diverse pilgrims gather at Mount Kailash. People share stories, songs, and traditions from their homelands. These interactions build understanding between communities that might otherwise remain strangers. The mountain becomes a place where differences fade and common human searching for meaning takes center stage. International scholars study Mount Kailash from many angles. Geologists want to understand its unique formation. Anthropologists document the various traditions surrounding the peak. These research projects require permission from multiple governments and cooperation with local religious leaders. Climate change affects Mount Kailash without regard for political boundaries. Melting glaciers and changing weather patterns concern all nations in the region. Environmental protection requires shared effort and common policies that put the mountain's welfare above individual national interests. The sacred mountain continues to shape relationships between peoples and nations. Its spiritual power creates bonds that transcend political divisions and cultural differences. Part 4. Lessons from the Untouched Summit. HTML. Blessed are those who know their place before the divine. The sacred mountain stands as a teacher. showing us truths we often forget in our daily lives. No human foot has ever touched the summit of Mount Kailash. This is not because we lack the tools or skill to climb it. We have conquered higher peaks and reached the depths of oceans. We have traveled to the moon and built machines that think. Yet this one mountain remains beyond our reach. The mountain teaches us about boundaries. There are places in this world that should remain pure and untouched. The sacred peak reminds us that not everything exists for our taking. Some things are meant to stay as they are, perfect in their distance from human hands. Those who truly understand wisdom know when to step back. The mountain calls to us, yes, but it also tells us to stop at its base. This is not weakness. This is strength of spirit. The strongest person is one who can control their desires when faced with the divine. The mountain shows us respect for forces greater than ourselves. In our modern world, we often believe we can master anything. We think technology makes us gods. But the sacred peak stands there, quiet and firm, reminding us that some powers are not meant to be conquered. People from many faiths agree on this truth. Hindu devotees bow before the mountain. Buddhist pilgrims walk around its base with reverence. Jain believers see it as the place of their first teacher's liberation. Bon followers call it the center of their world. All these different people share one understanding. This mountain is not for climbing. The unclimbed summit teaches us humility. When we look up at its white peak against the blue sky, we remember how small we are. This feeling is not meant to make us sad. It is meant to make us wise. The mountain helps us understand our proper place in the great order of things. Nature itself supports this teaching. The mountain's harsh weather and difficult terrain seem to guard its sanctity. Sudden storms appear when climbers have tried to approach. The very rocks and winds seem to say, "This place is not for you." The untouched peak stands as proof that some mysteries should remain mysteries. In a world where we explain everything and photograph every corner, Mount Kailash keeps its secrets. It shows us that wonder and awe still have their place in human life. This lesson grows more important as our world changes rapidly. The mountain's unchanged presence reminds us to pause, to consider, and to respect what came before us and what will remain after we are gone. Part 5. The mystery endures, hopes and questions for the future. The mystery endures, hopes and questions for the future. As we look toward tomorrow, Mount Kailash stands at the center of many questions that have no clear answers. Will this sacred peak remain untouched forever? The mountain has resisted all attempts to reach its summit for thousands of years. Each generation has watched it stand firm against human ambition. Technology grows stronger each year. Helicopters can fly higher. Climbing equipment becomes more advanced. Weather prediction improves. Yet Mount Kailash continues to turn away those who try to conquer it. The question remains, will future technology finally succeed where all others have failed? Some wonder if changing beliefs might shift how people see the mountain. Young people sometimes view old traditions differently than their parents. As societies change, will reverence for sacred places fade, or will new generations find fresh reasons to protect what their ancestors held dear? Climate change brings its own questions. The glaciers around Mount Kailash are changing. Weather patterns shift in ways never seen before. How will these changes affect the mountain's power to defend itself? Will natural barriers that have protected it for ages continue to hold? Religious communities face their own challenges. As the world becomes more connected, different faiths must share sacred spaces. Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, and Bon believers all call Mount Kailash holy. Can their combined reverence keep the mountain safe from those who see only rock and ice? Governments control access to the region. Political decisions can change overnight. Today's protection might vanish with new leaders or shifting policies. Will future rulers understand why this peak must remain untouched? Or will they see only a challenge to overcome and a record to break? The mountain itself remains silent about these questions. It offers no answers about its future. It simply stands as it has always stood, snow-covered and serene. Perhaps this silence is the most profound teaching of all. Those who love Mount Kailash can only hope that future generations will understand what we understand today. Some places exist not to be conquered, but to inspire. Some mysteries should remain mysterious. Some heights are meant to stay beyond human reach. The sacred peak will face whatever comes with the same eternal patience it has shown for countless ages. Whether it remains unclimbed depends not on the mountain's strength, but on humanity's wisdom to recognize that some things are more valuable when left untouched.